Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talking in Circles. I'm Clayton Caldwell with Brandon Caldwell here as we are recapping Phoenix, particularly the Straight Talk Wireless 500. A race won, Brandon, by Ryan Blaney. A dominant performance. It's not going to show up on a stat sheet. He did win stage one, but stage two was nowhere near the top 10. Had two pit road issues, two loose wheels, I guess. That one he had to come back in for. The other one he had to pull into his teammates' pit stall to get tightened, and that cost him some track position. Both times drove his way through the field past all these cars and found himself eventually in victory lane in the Detwitzer Ford at Phoenix. This place is a Team Penske haven. They seem to really figure it out. I know Cindric had some trouble, and Logano has some trouble, but Logano was a big player before he had his accident. Cindric was as well. But really, Ryan Blaney, Brandon, he was the class of the field, and it was fun to watch him go through the field and pass all those cars.
Yeah, and you wonder, Ford has always had, well, I wouldn't say always, but recently here has had the, upper hand on these shorter tracks. And I feel like Phoenix is one of those places, and they used to be the championship race. They thought, obviously the championship used to be one race, and this was a place that they felt like they needed to be really good at. The Team Penske cars obviously won the first three championships in this next-gen car too. So, all of that kind of correlates with everything. They were really strong yesterday, and in particular, Blaney. Logano pulled a move late in the race that, was very Logano-ish, I'll say. And then Austin Cindric hasn't had a top 10 finish, and it feels like since basically Obama was in office. So it's been a long time for him. And then Josh Berry's been dreadful when you talk about the Penske cars and the Penske
really
aligned affiliated cars. And we can get into this in a different conversation, but that's starting to feel like a situation that may need to change here going forward. We'll see though. However, I'm not saying for, this year, but I'm saying after this year, if things don't turn a corner quick, but, a good run there for Blaney, and came back from the back twice. His pit crew cost him valuable track position twice with loose wheels. They were able to catch it, and still, imagine what it would have been like if he didn't have that. It would have been Martin Truex Jr. 2017 at Charlotte, probably run away with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because when I saw a lot of people really hype up this race, and we'll get into it a little bit later after the race recap, but I thought it was a good race. But I think what really helped it was we watched a guy like Blaney who had a really fast car. He was able to pass cars because he was so good. And particularly going through the center of the corner, he really had his setup really figured out. The other car I would say that was sort of in Blaney's league, if there was one, was Christopher Bell. He finished second in stage two. Finished second in stage one. He won stage two, led 176 laps. So he was really in Blaney's, I guess, the second best car there, considering Blaney was the best car there. And then you had Larson, Gibbs, and Denny Hamlin rounding out the top five. But your thoughts on Bell and Gibbs and Denny Hamlin? Really outside of Team Penske, it seemed like Gibbs had their stuff figured out as well.
Yeah, and we'll get into more of that. To me, there's a certain, I'll say, manufacturer that really, really struggled here. But, Bell obviously has this place, pretty good. He won here a year ago, not last fall, but last spring he won here. And I know that they're all going to kill Stevens about the four-tire call. Listen, I think the thought is, obviously that was not the right call for Gale last year for Denny Hamlin. I think the thought was, with the added horsepower that they had, and you saw, I'll say a good amount of tire issues. I'm not going to call it a plethora, but a good amount of tire issues. And I think there was like three cars that all blew a tire basically the same lap. I think they ran over a piece of debris because something went through Cole Custer's grill at that point as well. So there was that to me is aside from the other tire issues, and we can get into why we saw some of these things and what can happen. But I think the thought was there, okay, we have the extra added horsepower. And, I think he came out sixth on the final restart there with 20 to go. If he came out fifth, he probably wins the race. So just one too many cars took two tires there for C. Bell, and it ended up, not being the right call. I think he would have chased him down with maybe even 10 more laps, but would have gotten him and passed Blaney, but it didn't work out. But I think in this format, it's not as detrimental as it would have been last year because, it's not a win and you're in format anymore. He was still able to get second place points, a second place finish, and that contributes very, very well to, a strong run for him at Phoenix Raceway. So I think in the long run, it cost them the quote unquote win, but they were still able to run second.
Yeah, and you bring up a great point about that pit strategy. I texted you watching that race saying, I always say that Chris Economaki line from 1986 Daytona 500 when Dale Earnhardt overshoots his pit. I always kind of use that as a reference of this is going to cost whoever the race. And I texted you and said this is going to cost Christopher Bell the race. And I think it did. But I wonder if it was more of a, hey, the worst case scenario is we take two tires and we fall back with a poor handling race car and we lose 6 or 8 spots. With this new format, we can play it a little bit conservative, take 4 tires, know we have a really fast race car, and then if we lose, okay, it's not the end of the world. Like it might have been last year where, they might have needed a win to get themselves into the playoff sort of championship. So maybe a little bit of a strategy based on the current point structure there. I look at third and fourth, Brandon. I think about Larson, who didn't have a great day, and Hendrick looked a little bit off for the most part. I mean, Byron finished 7th. You had the Alfredo didn't run that great. I know that he was celebrating getting into the top 10, but I think that was more of a strategy move. And Chase Elliott was nowhere to be found on Sunday. They really, really struggled. I know there was a lot of Elliott fans making some noise about Alan Gustafson again. That's always going to pop up when he doesn't run in the top 20 every week, which is crazy. But Larson was able to salvage a decent day. And then you have Ty Gibbs, who finished 4th, was a player. I think a lot of people felt he had the chance to win that race at the end there. But he made some really pointed and interesting comments at the end on pit road. I don't know if you heard those about what he said about being with the right team and kind of, reminding people of the Chris Gabehart lawsuit that's been going on, what he put in his lawsuit. So I didn't love Gibbs's comments. I'll refrain from telling you more of how I feel after you talk. But what do you think about Larson, particularly in 3rd, and then Gibbs in 4th there with those comments on pit road after the race?
Yeah, about Larson, I'll just talk about it as Hendrick as a broad scope here. They weren't very good. Chevrolet, Hendrick, you name it, all of those, the bow tie brigade, whatever you want to call them, they did not have it down for Phoenix. And I think this is, like we said, we're starting to see this was what the Fords were really good at. This would be a big problem for Chevrolet in the old format. Now, though, if they run good on the intermediate tracks and the Fords and Toyotas aren't as good on the intermediates, it doesn't make a difference because all the races mean the same in the first 26 and then in the final 10. So, it's not as detrimental to not run good here, but they really struggled here, and they were able to salvage a great finish, a 3rd place finish. And I think I think with this format much more now, we need to start looking at other things other than just the finishes itself, and that is points and stage finishes. Logano had a good day, even though he ended up 31st in the final rundown. He finished 3rd in both stages, in the first 2 stages. So, that's a good points day for him, even though he finished 31st. You're talking about Eric Jones, he finished 10th, but no stage points. So it's not necessarily like a top 10 finish like we used to see 20 years ago, and we go, oh my gosh, it's a great finish. It ended up not being a great points day for him because they got there at the very end of the race. So I think it's something we kind of need to keep an eye on, and that's basically true of Larson too, where he was 9th in stage 2 and then ran 3rd, and that's not terrific for them. That's not what we're expecting from that 5 team on a week in and week out basis. Ty Gibbs, he's done really good here. Back-to-back 4th place finishes. I think we're at the point now where we're looking at it and saying, okay, he needs to get his first career win. It's got to be coming soon. And if he continues to run like this, it's probably going to happen. So because you put yourself in position, it's going to happen eventually unless your name is Sheldon Creed. So I think it's going to happen for him if he continues to run like this. Listen, his comments. He's a spoiled little. Obviously his grandfather's the owner of the race team. He's a spoiled little kid, and he's 23 years old. I didn't make too much of it. The lawsuit out there. We all know what's going on with him, with Chris Gabehart, and the words that Gabehart has said about Ty Gibbs and the 54 team in particular, that they're being favored. Gibbs not showing up to meetings over the course of, being treated differently. Favoritism, obviously, because Ty is Joe's grandson. That's the way it goes. But if he continues to run like this, winning will cure all, and nobody's going to think twice about what Gabehart said. The fans aren't. It was a little bit of a jab. I don't want to see any more of that, but I think he could have been way worse about it, and it was kind of like, hey, I'm with my group of people now. And I honestly think if he's going to survive, that's probably the mentality that he needs to have, is I've got my group of people with me that are behind me 100%, and if that's what he feels and needs to feel in order to survive, then he's going to have to think that way. I don't know why you bring Chris Gabehart onto the pit box and basically replace Tyler Allen last year after you moved Tyler Allen out of the Xfinity Series to that car, and then 16 weeks in you got Gabehart in the box. It's just like, okay, and now all of a sudden you're back with Tyler Allen and you're running good again. So he's your guy. Let's keep it this way then. If he's your guy, that's all. If you're gonna make those comments, let's not see any quick changes, quick hook.
Yeah. I think from my standpoint, as the comments are concerned, and I don't want to focus too much on them because I don't think they're that big of a deal. But it seemed like a guy who, to me, and maybe it's, I don't know, maybe I'm misreading it a little bit, but it seemed like a kid to me who was sort of celebrating a fourth place finish, and he's in year 4 now in the Cup Series. We forget that, he's still young, and he's in year 4 now. He should be getting frustrated at fourth place finishes when he has a car that is capable of winning. And, we saw it with Christopher Bell, right? Bell was frustrated, and he's a little bit different part of his career as far as Gibbs and Bell, but, there's been plenty of guys in this sport who have run really well and didn't win a lot of races. And we saw a lot of frustration. Martin Truex Jr. comes to mind. He went a long spell with, he won a couple, I think, at DEI, and then he didn't win again for a while. He got frustrated. Bill Elliott didn't win a while, and you could tell the frustration on him. Even Elliott, early in his career, had a lot of second-place finishes. We saw, you mentioned Sheldon Creed earlier, he gets frustrated. So it was just that feeling that was concerning to me, was he's kind of taking a hat tip a little early here to where he's in year 4. He should be thinking about winning races and not letting wins get away. But to me, Brandon, that was really the only thing I got to say about his comments. But a couple other notables throughout the field. Reddick didn't win 4 in a row, obviously. I think we all kind of expected that coming in. To win 4 in a row, it would be remarkable. And that's not his best racetrack historically. So he gets a shout out. Bubba Wallace, I thought, he was involved in a wreck to come back and finish 6th as well. Byron finishing 7th. We didn't really see much of him. McDowell 9th, and then you had Eric Jones running out the top 10. The Roush Fenway Keselowski racing cars, RFK racing cars, 13th, 14th, and 15th. Did not have a lot of speed, Branny. Those Fords, it's funny, we talk about Team Penske's dominance here at Phoenix. It looks like that was not passed to their Ford brethren in Roush Fenway Keselowski, where Priest finished 13th. Not a terrible day. Buscher, who spent on pit road, lost all his track position, probably cost him a top 10 run. And then Brad Keselowski, who, aside from the 8 car, which we'll get to in a little bit, was, I think, the worst car there. So not a great day for RFK Racing.
Still managed a decent finish. I agree with you. And it's funny, they all ended up 13th, 14th, and 15th. Nobody's better than the other, I think, is the big kind of thing you can take away from it. They've struggled on these flat tracks, but I think the thing here that I pull away from this, and you touched on it, was the Penske cars running really strong and then them not. It feels like they're on an island all by themselves here at Ford. They don't have any more alliance partners anymore. The Roush cars, they had Front Row. Front Row's completely gone now. They're with Penske. They had Haas factory there, obviously with Chevrolet. They had Ware. They're obviously now with Chevrolet and RCR. So like there's no affiliation team there with them anymore. And they're sort of on, it feels like they're sort of on an island all by themselves. They're not really working with the Penske cars, it feels like. They don't run the same as the Penske cars. It's just kind of an odd thing. Why is that the case? Is that by design? Or is that because, I know everybody's looking for the next Dodge team, and Keselowski makes sense. And I sit there and I always say, no, Jack will never let that happen. But it just feels like something's not right there. That's all. They're kind of on an island all by themselves. So it's something to kind of keep an eye on going forward.
Yeah, it's they've got a lot of things going on there. When you think about the charter situation with Preece, it's not guaranteed. That's what we'll say on it right now as far as what we hear reported. It's not guaranteed. So we'll see if he's there next year, but I just, it's disappointing. I feel like the speed of RFK has not been there consistently. Really, they've taken a step up from where they were before Brad got there. There's no question. But there's another step they need to take. And maybe I thought Brad would be able to bring that there. I'm not sure that's the case with them. And
I thought that I think they're like a step or two back since a couple of years ago. They were much further ahead when Brad won at Darlington. Buscher was winning 3 races and running up front. Like I thought for a year there, they were running really strong. And then, 25 and 26 so far, things have not gone well. So that's something that I'm looking at like, okay, they've taken kind of a step back. I don't know if they'll ever get relegated back to where they were when they had Trevor Bayne and Ricky Stenhouse, but, how far are they going to fall back into the pack?
That's a good question. I thought the worst car there, Brandon, and it's stunning. I mean, it was stunning to watch. This is a guy who I know can still drive. When he goes to Xfinity trucks, he wins. He's in the top 2 or 3 every time. This is becoming, and the only reason why I'm saying maybe I'm a little bit exaggerating a little bit here, but we had the issue at Daytona with him where he got a little bit, I don't want to say fresh, but got a little frustrated. The team seemed frustrated with him at Daytona. And then there was more comments this week about being frustrated with their driver on the radio. And that's Kyle Busch. Just a horrific run for that 8 car. And I know you're going to sit there and people are going to sit there and say, well, he finished 17th. That's not too bad. He salvaged it. There's a lot of carnage at the end of that race, for one. And for two, they might have gotten some pit strategy to get him up there, but he was nowhere close. You talk about stage points, he was nowhere close to getting stage points. I mean, this is a guy who's supposed to be a championship contender, and I know, he's at RCR, and he just got a new crew chief there with Jim Pullman, and they went to Phoenix, and this was a race he finished in the top 5 last year, or ran really well last year, one of his better races at RCR a year ago. And he goes out there, and stage 1, 50 laps into the race, he's a lap down. I can't remember the last time Kyle Busch, without any issue, was a lap down. Like, the first or second car, a lap down. Cody Ware was way off the pace, but who cares? He's, of course, we expect that. But Kyle Busch, Brandon, that was, to me, it's back to the drawing board for that 8 car. Curious to see how they're going to do at Vegas this week, but a disastrous weekend for Kyle Busch.
3 out of the 4 weeks here, they've been in the news about communication on the radio, problems with driver crew chiefs. Now it sounds like the spotter's a little bit involved there, if you heard the radio chatter this week. Way too early for this crap to be going on. I mean, way too early to be this frustrated already with a new crew chief in a new situation, obviously, with Jim Pullman. Unbelievable. And you have to sit there and wonder what the future holds. He signed a 1-year extension through 26 with this car last year. You've got to wonder what the future holds here, because if this continues, there's absolutely no way they can continue to 2027 together. There's no way. I mean, I can't see it. And they got Jesse Love, whose name continues to be in the rumor mill with Legacy Motor Club in their 3rd car. Austin Hill's done a nice job, for them in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and probably deserves a Cup ride. And at this point, why pay Kyle Busch what you're paying him, which is pretty good money, to run like this. That's the thing, is that what does he bring to you? I mean, maybe he's enticing some sponsors to sign on that otherwise wouldn't be there, but there's got to be some kind of net gain that doesn't make any sense at some point, because if Kyle Busch is going to go out there and run 17th, and that's basically like the top of the day for him all day long, and that's absolutely what it was.
Yeah.
What the hell's the point? I mean, really, what's the point? And I talk with a Kyle Busch fan a lot, and he's all like, "Oh, what do you think the future holds?" And I think he's staying at RCR, and I'm honestly starting to call him Kyle Waltrip, because it's starting to look like Darrell Waltrip at the end, and that's what I did not want to happen. Darrell Waltrip, Richard Petty, we were young when those guys were at the tail end of their careers and running out there just to get paid, and that's what it's like. Kyle could probably take a pay cut and go somewhere and run better. But he doesn't want to take that pay cut. And so what's the future hold? He's burnt a lot of bridges. So did Darrell. That's probably why Darrell didn't end up with some of the places that he was at the end. So,
True.
Like, it correlates very well with that. And so I don't want to see Kyle Busch end up like this. But, boy, you got to wonder, after all of this, already we're 4 weeks in and we're having this conversation. I just can't believe it. And where are we going to be in week 12? I mean, where's this going to be? If winning cures all, and they're way far away from that. So,
yeah, and I said to you, and I was kidding, and I still don't think this is a viable option, but it was this bad where I said, is Jim Pullman on the hot seat already? Because it was that bad. Like, this is a guy who came from the Xfinity Series with Allgaier, ran really, looked really good, and it's stunning how bad it was. And, it's way too early to talk about the silly season for 2027. And, you're Kyle Busch, but if I'm a Kyle Busch fan, that's what I'm looking at. I'm like, please tell me there's another option out there. And there might be. I mean, I would look at that 7 if Suarez doesn't do too well. Maybe Spire pays a lot of money to get Kyle Busch to go over there, but, I don't know.
McDowell's a free agent too, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know why, if you're front row or forward,
right?
I would take a chance on him, especially if Gregson's going to run the way he does. They've been struggling a lot. Why not bring a guy like Kyle? He would take it's better than RCR. He would take that ride in a heartbeat.
I think at this point, anything is, other than Rick Whale Racing, I think, and that's affiliated with RCR. Anything that's not a one-car team, you move at this point for Kyle Busch. And I think Spire's the interesting one, because, like I mentioned, they've got 2 free agent drivers there with McDowell and Suarez. And here's the other thing that I've noticed, and I noticed this with Hocevar, is with the now extended, races for guys in the truck series, that's where Kyle could make up some money. If Spire can't pay him what RCR is paying him right now for just the Cup salary itself, they can say, hey, instead of running 5 truck races, run 8, and maybe they can make up some of the difference with that, if that's what they feel like he's worth. And maybe hopefully work to get him into an O'Reilly Series car with somebody as well, and try and make up the difference there with, now that they can run, 10 O'Reilly races and 8 truck races, maybe they can work a deal there where they can fill out those 18 races in those lower series to try and make up the difference for what you could be losing at the Cup Series. If you're willing to take that kind of a pay cut, maybe that's where the difference can be made. So Spire's an interesting case there because they have the truck team. So just something to kind of keep in mind. But look, I think anything's better. I know everybody's like, oh, Spires are downgrade. No, it's not. No, it's not.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Front Row Motorsports is not a downgrade. Like, nowhere is at this point. Like I said, other than Rick Ware Racing, and we don't even know what that car is because Cody's in it. Like, maybe that car is even better. I don't know. But I would take literally anything. And do you, just go to Junior Motorsports and say, I'll just run O'Reilly and just, win 15 races. I don't see that happening. But this is bad. And it's already, like I said, 4 weeks in. We'll see where we are Memorial Day. But boy, oh boy. And I'll say this. With how bad they've ran, 20th in points doesn't look so bad, and he's still there with a fighting chance to turn if this can get turned around. He's not in the Briscoe situation. He's not in some Barry situation, like a situation that a lot of these guys are in. With how bad things have been, he's still decently okay in points just because he's Kyle Busch. That shows you how good he still is. It's just wow. I can't believe we're already having this discussion 4 weeks in.
Yeah, and it's stunning. And a couple other things from this race that I took away. I don't know if you want to talk about Connor Zilic, but he's been, to me, a little bit of a disappointment so far. I know he had a pretty good race car at the road course and had some things come up there, but he's I don't even know where he is in points, but caused a couple of accidents. 34th, caused a couple of accidents. I mean, this kid came with a big following, won a lot of races last year in the Xfinity Series, and he's 34th in points. And I know it's early in his career; he's a rookie, nothing to be panicked about. But kind of surprised to see him way down in the points as much as he has, and a lot of it's due to just not performing. He hasn't had a bad luck like Briscoe has. But yeah, I was kind of surprised to see that. And the other big news of that day to me was Bowman with the vertigo. And I don't know if you can, with what you do and what if you can add anything to that as far as maybe what the prognosis is, or if they expect him to miss more time than just this last week here at Phoenix. I know they haven't really made a decision yet on Vegas. He's on the entry list, but that can change. And Anthony Alfredo drove that 48 car. He's the simulation driver there for Hendrick Motorsports. So those two guys really stood out to me. I thought Alfredo did not do very good. I mean, it's only one race in that car. What do that's a lot of expectations to throw on a kid who's never really running Cup to be in a 48 car at Hendrick Motorsports and expect him to perform. I get that. But I guess the overall Alex Bowman situation, then Zilic's performance.
I'll start with the Bowman situation first. I don't know anything outside of what everybody else knows. I would be very shocked if he's back by the time for Las Vegas. I've had vertigo. I did have it. I had a bad case of it. And mine, I don't know what his is caused from. Mine was, an inner ear infection, I think, that started it. And it took me months of physical therapy to get rid of it. So, and I'm a young man, and so is Bowman. So, it can be very severe. And if it's affecting your vision, they're not going to mess with it. So, I very highly doubt he's back in Las Vegas. The Alfredo situation, I get it that he hasn't had a lot of experience in the next gen car, but he is their sim driver. It's not like he's going in there completely blind like Myatt Snider. He is their sim driver. So I did expect a little bit more than what I got from him. Like, I saw somebody going, well, there's no practice and da-da-da-da-da, but okay, he is their sim driver. So I do expect more. I wonder, and who knows, but I wonder if the part of it was, Allgaier wasn't going to come for free and Alfredo may have for the opportunity, and that was the difference. And not putting Allgaier in. Listen, with these team owners today, it could very well be the difference. So, but if they're going to go with Alfredo, I hope they go with Alfredo for the remainder of the absence and give him an absolute legitimate shot. He's a nice kid. He's had some decent runs. He's never really had anything too terrific in O'Reilly. He had a little stint at RCR. Went to Cup way too early at front row for that year. So, it's hard to say how good or bad he is with some of the equipment that he's been in. But he's had some flashes in the pans and looked good in the O'Reilly race on Saturday. So I would love to see him just kind of get the whole opportunity. Talking about Zilic, he's a rookie, and I didn't put any expectations on him. I said, let's get through the whole year. Let's hope he finishes all the laps. He's had some bad luck, but so has everybody else. The thing that I'm concerned about, and this is going to be true of everybody that's back here, and I'm going to talk about this going forward, is stage points are really going to matter, and they're starting to matter a lot. And I think the big thing is qualifying and the algorithm. And if you get stuck back here now in points, and you get stuck back here with bad runs continually, you're going to get a bad draw, quote unquote. It's not a draw anymore, but you're going to get a bad spot for qualifying every single week. And that's difficult to get stage points if you're starting 31st, 25th every week at some of these tracks where it's really difficult to pass.
No question.
That might be, if you start 25th and you're at 12th at the end of stage one, great, but you don't get any stage points. That's really difficult for you. So you need to start qualifying better. And I think that's where some of these guys may get into some issues, is the algorithms just, and we, I'd heard Priest talked about this a lot on Sirius XM radio, last year and in previous years, the algorithm just kept them back because they just continued to try. He's like, oh, we had great runs. We passed 10 cars, but we ended up 16 because we started 27th. Like, okay, so you eventually need to get out of that kind of. That's why the algorithm is probably not a good idea. But what the hell do I know?
Agreed.
But that it gets you back there. This is what we have now, and it keeps you back there. So,
yeah, let's talk about points because that was something you mentioned as far as Zilich is concerned in stage points, and it's 4 races in. We've run a road course, 2 super speedway races, pretty much, and then of course Phoenix. We got Vegas coming up, we got Darlington coming up, so much more of races where you can control your own destiny, and much more what we're used to here on the Cup side of things. So some of the stuff that might be a little bit wonky in the points might right itself here in the next 3 or 4 weeks, but there's some guys who have built themselves some big-time holes, and you mentioned one as far as Briscoe. Right now, let's take a look at who's the worst in points. I mean, Custer, we never expected Cole Custer, who's 35th in points right now, to be a contender for the playoffs. Let's be honest. He's a single-car operation. Never really had a whole ton of success in Cup. But then you have Zilich back there, who's a rookie, and then you have Chase Briscoe, who's 47 points, and he's 33rd in points. Josh Berry's 31st in points. Austin Cindric, 30th in points. Austin Dillon, 29th, and Eric Jones, 28th. Those guys, some of those guys, Cindric, Briscoe, Berry, they're with big teams. And they're way back there. So are you concerned about them at this stage? You think it's still too early to be concerned? Or do you think there's a legit reason for their fans to start panicking a little bit here, being so far back here to start the year?
I understand some of the concern for sure. Like I said, I talked about the algorithm. The team that I'm not worried about is Briscoe. I think he's shown, even last year in his first year there, that they can get on a run and dig themselves out of this thing. There's no question about it. And I think we used to look at, it was funny, we used to look at different things, how to gauge guys' year. It was always Memorial Day, then it was the West Coast swing for a long time. There's really not a West Coast swing anymore because California's not on a schedule. I mean, they go to Vegas and Phoenix. So like now I think we look at the first off weekend of the season, which is Easter. And once we get to Easter, it's a good amount of tracks. It's a very, very much of a variety of tracks. You got Darlington next week. There's Martinsville. There's a good variety of tracks before you get to Easter. And I think once you get to Easter, you're going to kind of understand where people are. And I would love to see where Briscoe is at that point, because I feel like he can get into a run where he can get stage points. They can run up front. They can qualify up front. They can have a couple of those weeks that really help them get on the right track. I don't think the same can be said for Josh Berry. I don't think the same can be said for Austin Cindric. And you talk about Ty Gibbs and where we're at in a career of a guy that, is year 4. I feel that way about Cindric. This is Team Penske. His teammates run consistently strong every single week, and it just feels like that's a guy that can't seem to get it going. He's a lot like the other Austin, where he's had wins that have propelled him into the playoffs, and at big times, and that's really what's gotten him into the playoffs. You're not going to be able to get away with that anymore. The win is not going to cure all that. That's part of the problem that people need to understand about this system is, if you're Austin Cindric and you're, Josh Berry last year did not have a great year, but won at Las Vegas early in the year and made the playoffs, and everybody kind of forgot that he had such a bad year because he ended up 16th in points, even though he didn't have a great year. Right. That's not going to be the case anymore. You're not going to be able to make it just on the win. You need to be consistent. And that's what I'm worried about with Berry and Cindric. Cody Ware, forget about it. Forget about it. It's a single car team. It's Cody Ware. Forget about it. Custer too, and Stenhouse. I'm not worried about. Austin Dillon has not proven that he can run consistently strong. RCR is what they're at. So the guys I'm concerned about are the big team. With the big teams are Cindric and Berry. Those are two, and we'll call them Penske cars. The 21 car is a Wood Brothers car, but it's in the Penske shop. It's treated like a Penske car. Those two guys need to prove to me that they can run consistently up front. Oh, and if they can't, they're going to be mired back here all year long. Period.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you on both of those guys. I mean, Cindric Harvick talked about it at COTA where he was like, when he came to Cup, I expected him to really take the road courses by storm and at least perform really well on road courses. He hasn't even done that. That's his background. And the thing about Cindric, and I don't want this to come off wrong and nitpicky, but he seems just a little too happy to be running as poorly as he's been running the Cup Series. I don't know how to explain that.
I think he thinks he's doing a good job is what the problem is.
Right, right. And he's not. and Barry, I agree with you. Listen, Josh has a ton of talent. There's no question about it. He's been comes from the junior motorsports ranks with the with that car series and the late models cars, and he did a great job there and worked his way up to Xfinity. We know the story, but
and it's a tremendous story. It's a story that, as racers, we love because we want to see a guy make it without money and who's one of those guys. But I'm calling a spade here, and I think that's where you're headed too.
Yeah, no question. He's got to perform. It's a similar situation to Ty Gibbs, like you said. Eventually, you have to sit there and say, "Well, he's still kind of new." No, and as much as flack as Matt DiBenedetto got for how poorly he ran that 21 car at times, he's been the best driver there since
question.
Since
Blaney.
Blaney, right? So let's not forget that. And he's sitting on the outside looking in the Xfinity Series, no matter where he is. But yeah. So okay, racing at Phoenix, Brandon. First of all, let me finish this before we go to the racing. Anything else you want to touch on as far as who ran well and who's might be good or bad in points? The one thing I do want to say before I send it over to you, give a call to Van Gisbergen, Shane Van Gisbergen. 5th in points. That's pretty impressive for a guy who's really struggled last year. And I know it's early, and maybe, again, that might right itself a little bit, but he's off to a nice start. So that's the one guy I want to give a shout out to.
Yeah, and I think that has to do, obviously, with stage points. I mean, they got through Daytona and Atlanta really good. And they played the stage point game very, very well. And listen, I said that, and I'm a dumb redneck from New Jersey. What the hell do I know, right? But I said from the start, hey, stage points are really going to matter. And they played the stage points game really, really well. And they've had some really strong run. They've had some good runs. They've been pretty decently consistent. 11th at Phoenix, we're to the end. Obviously, the runner-up at Coda. He had a good run at Atlanta as well. Finished 6th in the Daytona 500. He got wrecked, I think, and ended up 30th. But decent finishes. And there's been a lot of guys that have been all over the board. And I'll say this last thing about points. It's so early still. And it's almost like if you're a baseball fan, when you see a guy that comes up with a batting average and it's like 112, first month of the season, you're like, what the hell? And then he gets a couple of hits and it's like 480. Like that's where the points are at this point, because a little's going to go a long way. There's going to be a lot of moving and shaking because everybody's so close until things start to sort themselves out. And maybe that's why we should wait until Easter to kind of see where we're at the first off weekend of the season. Once we get through a track like Darlington and like I said, Martinsville, and obviously Vegas, which is an intermediate track this weekend. So I think once we get through here, we'll start to see things start to kind of show. If there's a little bit of something that needs to be worked on, it's going to start kind of flashing at us, and we'll keep an eye on it. But there are some guys that are in real trouble right now that really need to have a good stretch of races here, and Briscoe obviously is one of them.
Agree with you there. Racing at Phoenix, obviously more horsepower than what we saw here in November. I think that really helped it. I thought the race was actually pretty good. Maybe if Blaney didn't have his issues, then maybe it was a little bit of a not as good as it could have been, because we saw a guy who was able to work his way through the field. There was some tire issues. You mentioned that one point that it looked like maybe some guys might have ran over some debris, and that caused some tire issues. But it seemed like we got to a certain point on a run where all of a sudden somebody started losing some tires. But overall at Phoenix, I thought it was an improvement from what we've seen in the past. I think the horsepower really helped. It makes me wonder, Brandon, if we didn't have any limits on horsepower, just how good some of this racing would be. Let's do it. What the heck are we waiting on?
20 years ago. Just think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what were your thoughts on the racing?
I thought the racing was very, very good. The tire fall off. I understand there were a lot of tire issues, some blown tires, some guys, but I think there's several things that go into that at this racetrack in particular as well. And that is, I think they were playing with pressures, obviously. The reason why is, well, there's not a lot you can adjust on this car. So, air pressure is one of them that's going to make a very big difference at a track like Phoenix, where that's going to be, like I said, going to play a huge difference. As the run goes, we saw them a lot more late in the race because as it goes on, guys are pushing. I want to see them push the limits. I want to see that. I do think there were some things about tire management. I also wonder if going down onto the apron early on in a run damages the tires because it's such a drastic change for some of these guys that have really low pressure. Tire management, like I said, camber settings for some of the teams, whether that, going along with some of the lower tire pressures didn't really help too much. Like, I think there's so much that went into what these issues could be other than just, oh, Goodyear brought a bad tire, because there were some teams that were able to get through it and be fine. So I just think there was a lot of pushing going on, pushing the limits going on, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's nothing really to work on in this car to make you better other than pressures. So that's what they're going to go with, and they're going to push the limits very much on that, and that's what we saw the issues on. I want to see it remain the same every week, like every time we go to Phoenix. Keep the same, tire combination, everything, because people are going to learn how to manage this thing. You saw, the 20, Stevens take the chance on the pit stop. Maybe next time he learns from that the next time we go back during the fall. Like, let's get 5 or 6 years of this package and these tires and all this together of going back to every couple of years, twice a year, where people are starting to learn, hey, this is what it did last fall, this is what it did. I can make this adjustment, this is how long it was able to last with this camber setting. Like, I think a lot of that's going to be a big thing going forward. It's still very new, and then you added the horsepower to it, which is new for this year. So I think as we go on, we're going to learn more and more, so keep it the same.
Agreed.
I mean, if you want to add 900 horsepower, but the hell with it. Go for it.
That's what I was going to say, other than adding horsepower, because to me that was, I still can't fathom it. I know they're trying to do it for manufacturer or whatever, but it's annoying that if we had to sit here with 6 years of bad racing at a horsepower, and every time you talk to these engine builders, they tell you, oh, no, we're good. We can go as high as we want. It's just mind-boggling. But anyway, IndyCar weekend was there too, Brandon. There was an IndyCar race, obviously, on Saturday, which led to a lot of IndyCar ties. Fox was obviously trying to tie into too, because Fox has IndyCar. Not in love with that, but there was one thing I did want to bring up when they brought Townsend Bell in and James Hinchcliffe into the booth. And the Fox booth, a lot of people have been very critical about the Fox booth. I have, for sure. I think Mike Joy, as much as I love him, not nearly as prepared as he used to be. He's, I think, starting to show his age a little bit in the booth.
For the record, he has immunity. He can hang on as long as he wants.
He does. You're right. I mean, the guy's a man, But I feel like there's the biggest issue in that booth is there seems to be a little bit of a tension between Harvick and Boyer. I know they're former teammates, but there seems to be tension there. And there's a lot of goofing off going on. I want to say this for the record before I give it to you. I was texted you and I was like, do we really need to see these IndyCar guys on this broadcast? It was driving me nuts. It's a NASCAR race. I don't need to see IndyCar guys on this broadcast. Please keep them off. It just drove me nuts. But when Townsend Bell got on there and he started talking about how the brake bias is on these cars and I'd be curious to see his brake bias, he went into some really good stuff. And it's like, we don't get that in the booth. And somebody brought it up and said, well, maybe that's part of the aspect of missing a crew chief that's in this booth, because they do have 2 drivers as analysts. And Larry Mack's not really, he's in a crew chief role, but he's more strategy than talking about the technical parts of this car. And so I love what Townsend Bell brought to the booth, because to me it was something that was severely lacking and it interested a lot of fans. And to me, as much as I hated the IndyCar thing, it was like it exposed a big problem in this Fox booth, in my opinion.
I think, too, there is some reluctance to talk about the cars and the technical aspects of the car. I think there's some pushback from certain folks, certain people about, oh, well, if you get too technical, your fan base is going to get lost. I don't think that's the case with this fan base, and that's what sometimes drives me crazy. Is like we all want to be like stick and ball sports. Okay, that's what everybody. Not me, but when I say we all, everybody that they all want to be stick and ball.
Hey, Mike Wallace brought that up on our podcast the other day.
But they don't want this part of stick and ball. Like when you bring a baseball guy in and he gets into the in-depths of baseball, nobody's telling him, hey, don't get too deep into the baseball talk because nobody knows what you're talking about. Nobody says that because you know who's watching baseball? Baseball fans. Just like this. This is what I always say. We're trying to market to people that aren't race fans. Why? Why? There's so many race fans out there. Race fans understand it. Do you and I know? Can you and I go fix an axle in a car, replace an axle? No, but we get the good majority of what they're talking about because we grew up as race fans, and we've been listening. We listened to the great people they had in the booth when we were kids that would talk about all this stuff all the time. So we understand it a lot more than probably anybody else would. So like, continue that. These are race fans. They get it. They understand that they're there every single week. A lot of them go to dirt tracks, which is a lot more technical than these cars. Like, all of that is okay. And that's probably what he brought. Because Townsend Bell's an IndyCar guy, he probably didn't get that same talking to of, don't get too technical with this fan base. I get that all the time too. And it's like, no, you know who's tuning in? People that understand what the heck they're talking about. That's all. And it's just, I think that's where the mentality is like, well, we want to be able to cater to the non-race fan. What? But that's what I think that's where they try and dumb it down so much that they lose the quality of the broadcast by doing that.
I hope you're not right on that. I hope they don't do that. I'll take your word for it. I think that's ridiculous that they do, because if you do it the right way, to me, like if you do it the right way and explain it well and explain it simple enough, you don't need to go deep into. I do agree to an extent, like deep into the technical part of it. You're like, okay, I'm done. But if you're telling me that my driver can make an adjustment to a car inside the car, or my team can make an adjustment, they're making an adjustment. I want to know that. I want to know why they're picking up speed and why they're not picking up speed. Or hey, they made an adjustment here and their lap times picked up a tenth and a half. Like, I want to see that. You know what I mean? And hear that and know that and understand that. So it's not that complicated, So I hope that's not the case. But I was not a fan of the IndyCar tie. It's Fox doing, trying to market everything together. And I know all the people who hate NASCAR want to be IndyCar were sitting there toting up the IndyCar, going, "Oh, it was great weekend, brr," which I don't care either way about. But I just thought when you saw somebody who does this for a living on the other side of things, and he came to the booth, it was like, whoa, to me when I heard him start to talk about that technical stuff. It was like, I want more of that. Feed me more of that. Instead of Boyer talking about the Wendy's menu. Like, it was ridiculous. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that.
Yeah, and I think that shows you, too, sometimes of prep work. Like, you can go in and be funny. And I honestly think that that's what Clint's... Because I don't think Clint Boyer's a stupid guy.
Not at all.
I don't think he's a stupid guy. He was a very good race car driver. Obviously wasn't a superstar race car driver, but a very good race car driver. But I think his guidance from his bosses are, be the goofy guy rather than just be the technical guy, and be the Kenny Wallace, who's also not an idiot when it comes to race cars. Like, Kenny Wallace knew a lot about the race cars because Rusty kind of beat it into him. But like, I think that's kind of the direction that he's getting, is be the goofy guy. And I don't know if the audience wants a goofy guy, and
right.
That's where I think we kind of go wrong. If him and Kevin got kind of deep into it, rather than trying to rib on each other all the time, maybe if they just talked about what they see in front of them. I think Kevin has some really good moments for me as in the booth.
Sure.
I think he could really be very good paired with the right person. I just don't. I think you're right. I think the fact that there's two drivers up there, and they look at it and say, well, we don't want them both saying the same thing, so Clint go be the goofy guy, when if he had a crew chief up there that he could bounce things off of, I think Kevin and the crew chief could be very, very good, because they're talking about it from the same thing two different ways might be the right way to go. And it's not that Clint's doing a bad job. I just don't think that having a goofy guy and 2 drivers up in the same booth makes a lot of sense.
Agreed. Although they do it on the IndyCar side too, and I guess Bell maybe knows more about the technical side because he just, again, to me he was excellent. But I was like, bring him on, and we've had David Hobbs, who did the Daytona 500 broadcasts in the 80s. He never really ran. I mean, he ran some races, but not a lot. Stock car races, and he was great as a broadcaster. So why can't Townsend Bell be the same thing? So that was kind of my thought process on that. But Xfinity, Brandon, oh darn it, O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race from Phoenix was won by Justin Allgaier. He finished 4th in both stages. Jesse Love was 2nd. Carson Kvapil was 3rd, and then Sheldon Creed and Sam Mayer ended up 4th and 5th. Those 2 Haas factory team cars. A race that was interesting. Allgaier was able to pull through, but at one point it looked like that was Carson Kvapil's race to lose. They even interviewed Travis Kvapil at one point, getting his thoughts on it. Your thoughts on that Xfinity race from Phoenix?
It was a great race. That was even better than the Cup race. Allgaier is so good in this series. He really is, and part of me wants to see what he can go do in a Cup car and a decent ride. He never really got that chance. I mean, H. Scott Motorsports was atrocious when he was there, but part of me also loves the fact that in this era where everybody's quick to run through, we still have guys like Ben Rhodes and Justin Allgaier and Grant Enfinger that stick around in their series and don't make the jump, and are guys that you can recognize in this series and just run strong. And Justin, new crew chief there, hasn't missed a beat. He's winning. He's leading the points, like 39 years old, still leading the points. New crew chief, all of that, Mr. Reliable. If you're Junior Motorsports, like the right move, it always is having him. I wanted to see Kvapil run. I want to see Kvapil win that race. I was pulling for him. I feel I'm so mad about the situation that he's in this year, and in Carruth too, in the sense of it's a losing situation. I learned as I grew up in life, like part of having somebody be successful is putting them in a position to succeed.
No
and I
question.
think that Kvapil being in 3 different race cars this year, 2 different teams, that's not a position to succeed. One of them is the 91 car with Mario Gosselin. His team's failed to qualify for the last 2 races. Like, that's where they're at. Not a great situation for Kvapil, and he still ran strong. And I would love to see him be able to get a couple of wins there and get a full-time gig again next year like he should, in the right way. And obviously, he's another fun story of a guy that kind of worked his way through. I know he has Travis Kvapil, but doesn't feel like he has a ton of money behind him. So if he did, he wouldn't be in this situation if he had some money behind him. He'd be running like Sammy Smith, full-time in Junior Motorsports if he had all this money behind him. But he doesn't. So it was nice to see him run 3rd. And I'll say this about the O'Reilly series. Haas factory team looked really good. They had a great showing. You talk about their cars and their affiliated cars. Jeremy Clements was running really good. I guess he said he got used up by the 8 there at the end of the race. I didn't, TV didn't cover that really, but fell back to 11th.
Yeah.
But great to see him being up front and being competitive, because this is a guy that we all know the story. Owner, driver, independent. They're not necessarily that anymore because they are aligned with the Haas factory team, but we all still feel really good about him because he's a terrific guy and still has a Southern accent. Like, we all love that. As much as nobody wants that, we all love it. And good to see him run up front. Would love to see more of that from him this year if we can. So the Haas factory cars looked really good. And I was one that was questioning their move to Chevrolet this year, because I'm like, man, how many Chevrolet teams do you need? Is there that many Chevrolet resources to go around? Like, wouldn't you be better with Ford and just, even if they have a limited number of resources, like still being the number 1 team there? No, obviously not, because they're running better now than they were last year. So they made the right move there. Looks like, at least so far in this early part of the O'Reilly series. So good run for them. And I'll say this, and this is where things start to really rear their heads. These unaffiliated, non-Cup O'Reilly teams get destroyed on pit road. Clements lost several spots on pit road. Jeff Burton had one of the best cars there all night long. Kept running up to 6th and then falling back to 14th in the pit after the pit stops. Just out, and this is a 5 lug, so it really showed its head, unlike the Cup Series. just there's no chance they're going to win a race, outside of Daytona and Talladega, even if they have the best car there, because they're going to get destroyed on pit road by these conglomerate teams that have these high power pit crew guys, because they're getting the rental crew from them. They're the second tier. And if anybody gets good, they move up, and it comes to that's where they're at. It's cheaper for them to do that, and that's how they operate and survive. But they're never going to win a race doing that, because they're getting destroyed on pit road every single time.
Right. Yeah, I feel bad. I thought Jeb ran a great race, and he looked great. He ended up 7th. Sammy Smith was 6th. Jeb 7th. Carruth 8th. Corey Day 9th. Anthony Alfredo in 10th. Yeah, another week, another Brandon Jones wreck, which is shocking. But looking at the points, as much criticism as Corey Day has gotten, he's 8th in points. Rajah Carruth is 7th in points. You have Carson Quapple's 4th, which you talked about. He's going to be in 3 different cars this year. Just kind of looking through the points, I don't think there's really, unlike the Cup Series, Swalich is 18th in points. I mean, that is something that
that's atrocious, honestly. I mean, the Gibbs cars they're so far and away so much faster than the rest of the field. Even they should be right there with Junior Motorsports. This is his 2nd year. He made the jump way too early from the Truck Series because Dad's got a ton of money, and it not getting any better so far early on in the year.
Yeah, 18th needs to be better, but I still think he can make his run if he has to.
Because he shouldn't run worse than 10th every week. They need to look at the Gibbs Xfinity car, O'Reilly cars, like we used to look at the Venerini cars, where 5th is a bad day. That's how much funding they have, and so 18th is atrocious. And yeah, you're right. He can dig himself out of there just because they're going to run 8th on a bad day. So
no question. Both Xfinity and Cup this weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Saturday, you have the keep doing it, Xfinity, the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series on Saturday.
I got to say about that race, but go ahead.
9 o'clock practice. This is local time. 10:05 qualifying, and then you have Cup practice and qualifying on Saturday as well, followed by the O'Reilly Auto Parts race, and then Sunday, of course, the Cup race. What do you want to say about the races from Vegas, Brady?
Well, first, the O'Reilly race. The name of this race should be outlawed. It is the dumbest name. I mean, the Bushy McBush race has. This doesn't hold a candle to that. That's how it's called, the Liuna. That's it. The Liuna. That's it. How dumb is that? That is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And it's so horrible when you work in the industry trying to name that. I mean, here, this is the same thing that I deal about with stupid commercials. If you do something that pisses me off, I'm not going to use your company, no matter how much money you spend. And it's like, isn't that a union? So like, how am I going to use the union anyway? But like, it doesn't look good for you if you do something stupid. I get it that we're trying to do something out of the ordinary. It doesn't make sense if it's dumb. Call it the Liuna 400. Calling it just the Liuna 250, whatever the hell it is, who cares? Don't do something out of the ordinary. That is the dumbest thing. I saw that today and I went, oh my goodness. And I think they did this last year too. Just silliness.
Yeah, that's terrible. Terrible. Cup side, also, that is the Pennzoil 400, like it's been the last few years.
See? That's a good name.
For sure. Really, on the Xfinity Series side, I'm trying to look through. Zilich is in the 1. I'm trying to look through the entry list here. Anybody that's really interesting.
Larson's in the 88.
Yep, Larson's in the 88. Just saw that. 41 cars,
Briscoe's in the 19.
Oh, interesting.
He could probably win because Cruz is too young to still run 1.5 miles. He turns 18 at the end of March, so he can't run this race. So Briscoe's running it. He'll probably win. I mean, that's a really good seat for him, and obviously he's a great driver. So
heck yeah. So that's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. And then of course the Cup Series racing from Las Vegas Motor Speedway.
Yeah, I'm curious in the O'Reilly Series to kind of see how I'm one that loves the back end of the field. Nick Sanchez, feel really bad for him. I'm kind of monitoring that situation all year. They were atrocious last week, had a problem early in the race. Kind of want to see how that's going to work out for him.
No sponsor on the entry list either.
How is this going to make the whole year? But good luck to him. I really wish him luck. And I want to see how Quapple runs in the 9. It's a part-time team, but it's still Junior Motorsports. And then Corey Day is the one that I'm kind of looking at to see. He's caused a lot of controversy. People have been pissed off at him, but he's gotten some good finishes still. So can he put it all together? And it's still very early in the O'Reilly Series season. Once he starts putting full races together, what's that going to look like for him? I'm kind of keeping an eye out on that. Maybe at an intermediate track, might be a little bit better for him.
Yeah, I agree with you. These Xfinity cars are fun because they are sort of a throwback to what we are used to. They're like sort of the Gen 6 car still, so they're a lot of fun to watch, especially on these mile and a half. I think they put on a better show than what we see in the Cup side of things. So, yeah, Chandler Spitz in a 5. Didn't run that great. Hettinger's team did not run good at all.
Don't worry about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Harrison Burton needs to turn a corner. This is a week that I think you look at him and that team and go, well, this should be a good top 15 for them this week. They need it. They've been awful to start the year. So.
Yeah, Harrison's 30th in points. I didn't even mention him when we talked about guys who weren't high in points. Because I had to scroll down to see him. That's how low he was.
Behind Jordan Anderson, who only ran Daytona, he's still behind him. Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's terrible by Harrison. He's had a tough year to start the year, and that team is decent, but can they make that up? That's the question. Can they make that up? Well, I guess they start this weekend to try and do that. Anything else from this weekend at Phoenix or next weekend at Vegas you want to discuss?
Can Ty Gibbs continue his hot streak? I think that's something to keep an eye on. If he gets into a bad way here, that could spiral out of control, or vice versa. I think if he stays hot, he's really going to be strong. Hamlin, to me, has been one that they've been okay. They haven't been great. We're still kind of waiting for them to show their head of, hey, we're competing for a win this week. They've been at the top 10. He had a Coda. He, wasn't really be seen all day, and then still ended up 10th because he's Denny Hamlin, and he could run in the top 10 with his eyes closed. But in Phoenix, he was good. He wasn't great. Like, is this going to be the week where we start to see Hamlin kind of break out and say, hey, I'm still, I'm 44, but I can still win races? Yeah. That's kind of what I'm keeping an eye on, is some of those guys that we're looking for that haven't come out yet. Will this be the coming out party?
And a couple of guys I think that I expected more from that I haven't gotten a lot from. One's Gregson. We'll see how he does.
It's been a disaster.
And front row, when McDowell was there in that 34 car, they were very competitive week in and week out. They have not been the same since he's left. Gilliland's done a decent job.
Zane's been the best car by far there for the last 2 years.
He has. And then Gregson's been bad. And the other team I'm a little surprised about they haven't been better is Legacy Motor Club. With the 42 and 43 of John Hunter Nemechek and Eric Jones. They were nowhere to be found last week at Phoenix. I know I think Eric Jones ended up in the top 10, but it was barely a top 10. They didn't get any stage points, neither one of them. And it's just, you're kind of waiting for them. I mean, we've talked about Toyota's prowess, at least Gibbs' prowess. And same thing with what we've seen from 2311 early on in this year. How's that not translating to these two guys? I think they got 2 new crew chiefs there, at least one.
Max in his second year there with John Hunter, yeah.
Yeah, but still, it's fairly new crew chief combinations there. So you're kind of waiting for them to show themselves, and they just haven't so far. So I'm curious to see if at a mile and a half track, if some of that work that they've done starts to pay off here.
And here's my concern, and this is a little bit different than you mentioned front row. Front row's got 3 young drivers that are unproven. 0 Cup wins between them. All of them, among them, because there's 3. So, is it the equipment or is it the drivers? We kind of really don't know. Eric Jones is a proven commodity. He's a very good driver. He's run really strong at times. Runs really good at Darlington, which is the ultimate driver's track when you talk about that. And they're still not running good. So you have to think it's the equipment, and they went through a major overhaul change in 2024. So to me, it's when are we going to start to see that show the benefits on the racetrack? And we've seen some teams. 23XI has really made a jump this year after really struggling last year. Reddick in particular, obviously, but even Bubba has run really strong. Are there going to be other teams that are going to do that, or is it just going to be them that's going to do that this year? And obviously, Legacy's there, front row's there. RFK Racing needs to take that next step. So somebody's got to do it, and we'll see. It's a matter of just taking that next step, not necessarily winning out of the box. I don't think we're expecting Legacy to go out there and win multiple races. It's like, okay, but can they get out of the top 20? Can they get into the top 20 on a consistent basis?
Right. Well, Brandon, as always, great show tonight. I appreciate you coming on. We're gonna put this on YouTube. We're gonna put it on our Spotify page as well. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this edition of Talking in Circles. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.